Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Bill Lawson, chiropractor here in Austin, Texas, and I'm proud to be your TCA president. I want to welcome you all to tonight's TCA virtual town hall, Texas Politics, the Courts, and their impact on the chiropractic field in Texas. Advocacy and legal defense are two reasons why TCA exists, and we want to keep our members and all Texas chiropractors updated on issues that impact our profession. As you know, elections were held last week. On tonight's town hall, TCA lobbyists Josh Massengill and Caden Norton of Statecraft will analyze the election results and explain how it might impact the upcoming Texas legislative session. I'm pleased to report that all candidates supported by the TCA Political Action Committee won their respective races. So we have plenty of friends at the state capitol who support TCA's legislative agenda. On tonight's town hall, Statecraft will discuss the upcoming legislative session and give you a high-level rundown of what the TCA is fighting for when the session kicks off in mid-January. Lastly, you might be aware of the lawsuit between the Texas Association of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine and the Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners. The outcome of this lawsuit will impact the future of chiropractic acupuncture in Texas, and the TCA has stepped in as an intervener in this case. What happens in this trial will have far-reaching effects for Texas chiropractors, and TCA's attorney, Matt Wood, will give you the latest update on this. Before we do that, I have a few announcements. First, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Corey Rose and the Legislative Affairs Committee. Dr. Rose's team is hard at work preparing for the upcoming legislative session. We're optimistic that several of our chiropractic-specific bills will advance and become law in Texas. The legislative session is showtime for the TCA, and we have an incredible team of lobbyists, leaders, and volunteers who are all preparing to ensure that we are successful in the upcoming session. Next, I'd like to personally invite you to participate in the TCA Legislative Day, which is Thursday, February 16th in Austin. The TCA's lobby day is the biggest in the nation. You've probably seen pictures with hundreds of people at the steps of the Capitol. In 2017, 600 chiropractors, students, and faculty from Parker University and Texas Chiropractic College, patients and chiropractic supporters stormed the Capitol for chiropractic. In 2019, on Valentine's Day, around 500 doctors and patients showed their support and love for the chiropractic profession by attending. We're shooting for 500 again in this next year's event. So please put February 16th on your calendar and join us in Austin. This is one day to take a break from seeing patients and do your part for the profession. Our goal is to educate our elected officials and staff about the positive impact of chiropractic and to get support for our ambitious legislative agenda. If you've never been before, this is an amazing day of camaraderie, inspiration, and fun. Registration for TCA Legislative Day will open soon, so stay tuned. We'll have more information on the day shortly. Lastly, while you're in Austin, you might want to stick around for our third Texas Chiropractic Legislative Conference on Friday, February 17th and Saturday, February 18th. This is going to be held at the Hyatt Regency in Austin. We'll have an awesome speaker lineup, so come to complete your CE hours, gain some valuable training for you and your team to run a more profitable, efficient practice and network with chiropractic colleagues. We also recognize legislators, volunteers, and chiropractic advocates who have contributed to our legislative success. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our lobby team from Statecraft, Josh Massengill and Caden Norton. Josh Massengill is one half of Statecraft, which has represented TCA in the past 3 legislative sessions and helped TCA to some significant wins, including diagnosis and Senate Bill 679, a landmark bill authorizing chiropractors to jointly own medical entities with physicians. If you own an integrated practice, you have the TCA, especially Josh and Caden, to thank for this. Josh is a native Texan and graduated from Pepperdine University School of Law. Josh served as legislative counsel for a U.S. representative in Washington, D.C. before returning to Texas in 2014. He served as counsel to Texas Senate Committee of Health and Human Services, managing a broad portfolio of legal and regulatory issues. Josh also is an attorney practicing here in Austin. Caden Norton has worked at the Capitol offices of two state senators, John Corona and Charles Schwartner, and staffed for Senator Schwartner during the Sunset Commission's 2015 review cycle. He has significant experience in a broad range of policy issues, including health, insurance, and professional licensing. Caden has worked as a lobbyist during the past 4 legislative sessions, representing the interests of a diverse group of clients, including the TCA. He's been responsible for some of TCA's groundbreaking legislative wins. Before we get started, one final announcement. This webinar will be recorded in case you want to watch the replay. Also, if you have a question for any of our panelists, please type it in the chat box, and it'll be answered during the Q&A portion of tonight's presentation. So let's get started. Have some questions already for the lobbyists. The November elections took place last week. Can you guys give an analysis as to what happened and how the candidates supported by the TCA Political Action Committee fared?
Absolutely. And thanks, Dr. Lawson, for having us on and for the wonderful introduction. But yeah, elections are done, mercifully. We're over with that. And just to give you sort of a quick recap of what TCA's Political Action Committee has been up to this cycle, give or take, made about $75,000 in contributions to different candidates at various levels of state government. That's right in line with what we've done in previous cycles. So really, really happy about that. The PAC hosted a number of fundraisers and meet the candidate events across the state for various candidates. Those were really successful. And as you mentioned, the PAC did endorse candidates. So TCA doesn't endorse candidates, but its Political Action Committee does. And seems like we endorsed about 50 or so candidates, and we're batting 1,000 on those. Had great success here in November with the candidates that we had endorsed. And so the takeaway really is good news. We had positive results across the board, and we're happy that we have so many friends in the legislature.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Josh. The next question is, what do we think the Texas House and Senate will look like in terms of balances of power and who the key players may be this session?
Sure. So as far as makeup goes, so in the Senate, last session there were 18 Republicans, 13 Democrats. This session, it will at least be 19 Republicans, 12 Democrats. 19 Republicans and at least 11 Democrats. There's one seat down in the South Texas area that since the election results haven't been fully certified yet, the margin right now is less than 600 votes. So right now, Democrat candidate Morgan Lamancia is winning that race, but that's a very tight margin, especially for a Senate district. So it'll probably in all likelihood shake out to be 19 Republicans, 12 Democrats, but that one seat we're kind of holding our breath waiting to see what happens. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was reelected, so he will continue to preside over the Senate. All the statewide races were held by Republicans. So on the House side, the Republicans had a net gain of one seat. So the balance of power in the House next session will be 86 Republicans to 64 Democrats. And it looks like Speaker Dade Phelan will be reelected to be Speaker again next session. So that, unlike the Lieutenant Governor, which is elected by the people every cycle, the Speaker is actually the first vote that the House members make when they come into the session. So nothing is official until they take that vote, but all signs indicate that he will again be reelected.
Thank you, Caden. That's some great insight. Next question is, what is the TCA's top legislative priority in the 88th Texas legislative session?
Wow, that's a little like being asked to choose your favorite child. You might have a favorite, but you wouldn't say it out loud, you know. No, Kaden and I were just talking recently that for the past couple of cycles, we've been in this kind of unfortunate position of having these huge battles that we had to wage because of existential threats that were looming on the horizon. And so that got a lot of our attention, and everything else kind of got put on the back burner. And this cycle, we're really just excited about the fact that we can pursue a broad legislative agenda and really kind of swing for the fences. So we've got a lot of things that we're really excited about. The one, I guess, that I would call your attention to first and foremost just relates to opioids. And you can see it on the slide here, but we are intending to pursue a bill that would attack the opioid crisis in Texas by requiring conservative, non-pharmacological care when opioids are being prescribed. And so we've done some great work on this in the past, and we feel like there's a real appetite in the legislature to kind of maybe, move forward on that even a little further than what's been done in the past. And it's just a great issue for us that really just something that we want to keep hammering home is, the benefits of chiropractic and what that can mean for the people of Texas.
Thanks, Josh. I'm sure we're all on board with that for sure. Can you outline some of the other key bills that the TCA plans to push and why they're important for the chiropractic profession in Texas?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So if you're able to see your screen, there's kind of a list here of some of the things that your legislative committee has basically prioritized as being on the TCA agenda for this upcoming session. These are obviously little teeny blurbs, so I will expand upon these briefly, but just in the interest of time, I won't go in too deep of a dive. But so one of the issues we've seen is for the designated doctors out there, the fee schedule for designated doctor exams were set, many of them 20 years ago, haven't been adjusted since. And so unfortunately, we've seen across the state a decline in the number of designated doctors participating in the program. And we think that's a direct result of the lack of a pay increase over the years. And so every year, due to inflation, the compensation for that just goes down and down. And so what we'd like to do is to adjust those fee schedules to account for inflation from when the time they were set, but also to tie that to inflation going forward so that designated doctors know year after year, due to inflation, they're not going to see a reduction in their compensation. We really think that will ultimately save the program from this continued decline. Another one we've worked on in the past for our doctors who are sports athletes on high school fields and courts. There's been an issue where 2 sessions ago, we passed legislation that would allow a chiropractor to remove a student athlete from play. And this is sort of the next step in that process, which is to add chiropractors to the concussion oversight teams at school boards or at school districts. So right now, chiropractors aren't expressly included in the makeup of those committees, which are really important for setting concussion protocols and things like removal and return to play protocols for student athletes. And we really think having a chiropractor as part of that process would be really beneficial to the health and safety of student athletes. Another is relates to malpractice cases for chiropractors. So right now there's this kind of oddity in the law where in a malpractice case against a chiropractor, only a physician can serve as the expert witness on the question of whether the alleged deviation from the standard of care caused the alleged injury. So in a case against a dentist can serve in that role. And in a case against a podiatrist can, but in the case of a chiropractor, only a physician can do so. And so we'd like to allow chiropractors to do that, to just make sure if you're in that unfortunate circumstance where you've got a malpractice case against you, somebody who understands your education, the techniques that you deploy, the treatments you provide, they can opine on whether, what you did or didn't cause the alleged injury. Another one we've worked on is fortunately a bit of a rarity, but when it occurs, it can be pretty devastating. And that is, we've seen practices where insurance companies will do a sample audit of a provider's claims, and then they will extrapolate the findings of that sample audit across the recent claims history of that provider. So, for example, they'll audit 10 claims. They'll see that 4 of them were overpaid by 20%. They will extrapolate those findings across the remainder of your recent claims history and say, you owe us $38,000. And so again, fortunately, it's not happening daily, but when it does happen, when that $38,000 bill comes due, it can be pretty devastating. And so what we'd like to do is prohibit insurers from using that extrapolation tool. So say you can definitely recoup overpayments that you can actually verify, but you can't do a sample audit and extrapolate that across the remaining claims. Another one we've worked on that we're really excited about is reforming the way that these state health licensing boards work. So what we would like to see is when a licensing board that doesn't regulate chiropractic, for example, the medical board, gets a complaint about a chiropractor, they send that to the chiropractic board, and vice versa. If the chiropractic board were to get a complaint about a physician, send that to the medical board. And so the point being that, if you are subjected to an investigation and potential disciplinary action, we feel it's important that kind of like that malpractice issue, a person who understands your training and education and the treatments that you deploy is conducting that investigation and, if necessary, taking action. We think that'll expedite the disciplinary process. We think that's in the interest of Texans to make sure if somebody is doing something they ought not be doing, action can be taken more quickly. And then the last thing that we're working on and continues to be, a challenge that we will have to adapt through as the litigation goes on, and I know Matt Wood will be talking about that a little later, is the chiropractic acupuncture issue. And, we want to make sure that we're doing the things we need to do to protect chiropractors' ability to continue to practice acupuncture. Again, I know that's a lot of information, and I covered each of those very quickly. So if you have any questions about that, please, again, as Dr. Lawson mentioned, feel free to type that in the chat box. We're happy to dive into those deeper, or you can always contact the TCA office as well.
Thank you, Caden. Those are 7 awesome points for us to advance forward in the legislature. So I'm looking forward to this legislative session. What does the TCA need from its members to get these pieces of legislation passed?
I would say the big thing, and we're going to talk about it a little more later, and I know you mentioned it briefly, but participation in our legislative day, that's huge. I mean, you saw the pictures. It really makes a statement. And I'll just say, I think, maybe you'd have a sense that, well, this is a really good kind of rah-rah thing for the profession, but is it really effective from a lobbying standpoint? And I'm here to tell you the answer is yes. It is incredibly effective just as a lobbying tool. So it's great. It's a lot of fun. It's good for the profession, but it is extremely effective from a lobby point of view. And that is something that we really we can't afford to whiff at that this year. We really need people to show up. So that would be a big one. I'd also say that, beyond that, the things that we, kind of need from docs across the state are pretty minimal or don't take a lot of time. For example, just staying on top of your email and the TCA Facebook group to see, when those opportunities arise to call a legislator or, email somebody at the state capitol. That makes a real big difference. It takes about 30 seconds of your time, but in the aggregate can be a really important thing. And then I'd also just say, use this opportunity to meet your legislators. I mean, you can, we'll help you do it on Ledge Day, but you can do that on your own as well. And those relationships that our doctors have developed with the people that represent them have been incredibly useful to us over the years. So go out, meet your legislators, and then let us know about that. And we can, make note of it and then help point you in the right direction. And then finally, I would just say for anybody who, is kind of reading through this agenda and getting excited about what you're seeing, there are plenty of opportunities for you to get more involved. And just one example, we've got a bill review committee that has to review darn near every bill that gets filed every cycle. And we have to lay human eyes on it and to check to see, whether it impacts chiropractic and what our view on it is going to be. And that's a lot of work. And it, in the years past, we've been spreading that around just a couple of committee members. So there's plenty of opportunities for you to be involved. And if you are interested in that kind of thing, then shoot us an email. We'd be glad to kind of help rope you in and put you to work.
Thank you, Josh. And those committees are wide open, guys. There's always something for you. So take Josh up on that. If something you want to do, reach out. We'll find a place for you. Josh, you had mentioned Legislative Day again. Can one of you guys elaborate on the TCA Legislative Day on February 16th? Tell us what it's about. What are we to expect when we get there? Is there any kind of briefing or training? Give us a little synopsis, please.
Yeah, so candidly, I think the Legislative Day has sort of become a point of pride for Josh and I. Like was mentioned before, we've had 500 plus doctors and students and just chiropractic patients showing up at the Capitol, and it is. I know it may not feel like it's an important thing. You may be thinking, yeah, sure, it's just a rah-rah. It is a rah-rah thing. That's a really important piece of it, but it is critically important for the work that we do and for getting our TCA's legislative agenda across the finish line. So, on that day, what we do is we schedule in advance all these meetings with, we try to hit every legislative office, all 181 offices, and the governor and lieutenant governor. We, as best we can, schedule you to visit with your actual legislator, so your senator and your House member, so that they're hearing from their constituents about issues that matter to them. And we equip you with the materials you need to educate your legislators and their staff on the issues important to chiropractic. But maybe equally as important as that is it's an opportunity for us to hear back from the legislators on what resonates with them. So in years past, we have gotten just critically valuable information from those legislative days saying, Senator X really cares about this issue, or Representative Y has had issues with chiropractic, and that's new information to us. Josh and I are just the two of us running around the Capitol, hitting as many offices as we can every day. But when we've got 500 folks out there at the Capitol knocking on doors, the information we can share, but also the information we can gather is just so critically important. So we do our best that day to equip you well in advance, actually, for that day. So please don't be intimidated by it. We will send out some kind of pre-event videos doing a little bit of training. We will provide you with training the day of. We will give you maps of the Capitol and documents to hand out. So please just, as best you can, get rid of any rationale for not attending, and please just mark your calendars for that day.
Thank you, Caden. I certainly back you up on that. It's easier than what you would think, and you should have no anxiety about it. Everybody's there to support it. So I'm asking all of you guys to come on out on the 16th of February. It's going to be a really good time, and it's a really good thing for the profession. While I've got the lobbyists, I'd like to ask one more thing. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add that I haven't asked you tonight?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just kind of piggyback on what Josh was saying, what we need from y'all. All those things are definitely important. One other thing is just if you have a relationship with a legislator or with a legislative staffer, if you can let us know that, we definitely exercise discretion in how we, use that relationship. But I'm recalling, let's say it was maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago, there was a notoriously difficult member to get a hold of who we were trying to get a hold of. And at the last minute, somebody said, oh, Dr. So-and-so has coffee with them every Friday. And that was great to get that information, at least at that point, but having that information in advance would have been really helpful. So yeah, just so if you do have those relationships, just please let us know, because they are very valuable.
Thank you, Caden. Now's the time. If anybody else has any questions, to type in the chat box for Josh and Caden. If you have a question, please type it in, and we'll do our best to get them answered. All right. Well, moving on to acupuncture. I don't see any questions in the box. Second part of the webinar today is acupuncture. And as I mentioned earlier, the TCA is involved in litigation with the Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners that was brought on by the Texas Association of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. This is a complicated case that has dragged on for several years. To help explain where we are in the process and how we got here, I'm excited to introduce to you Matt Wood, who is a partner at at an Austin law firm at Weisbart, Springer, and Hayes, LLP. Matt handles complex civil litigation and high-stakes appeals, and his practice covers a wide array of business disputes. Prior to joining his current law firm, Matt was an attorney at Baker & Botts, LLP. Matt has represented TCA for many years and was a catalyst for TCA's watershed victory in the Supreme Court last year that affirmed the right for Texas chiropractors to treat nerve. Matt was recognized with the TCA Chiropractic Advocate Award in 2021 and for his contributions to our profession. Matt, on behalf of the TCA and all Texas chiropractors, we want to say thank you. So let's get started. So Matt, can you give us some background on this legal fight and how we ended up here?
Sure. Well, thank you, Dr. Lawson, for having me. So this lawsuit is about acupuncture, as you said, and it was filed way back in 2014. And really the bottom line issue is whether chiropractors in Texas have the legal authority to use acupuncture as a treatment option. The way this plays out legally, just so everyone knows, is that there's a law passed by the legislature called the Chiropractic Act, and it sets the basic groundwork. I guess you could say it's the field that you can play in, right? But it's got some language that's subject to interpretation. It can be somewhat vague or ambiguous on the margins. And so the Board of Chiropractic Examiners issues rules that interpret that Chiropractic Act. And so what often happens, it's happened in the nerve case, it happened in this case, these issues about scope of practice surface because some competing healthcare provider doesn't like one of the board's rules and wants to challenge that in the courts and say that it exceeds what's allowed under the Chiropractic Act. And so that's what's happened here. The board has adopted some rules that clarify that acupuncture is a treatment option. It puts a little bit of an extra training requirement on chiropractors and requires a permit. It's 100 hours of training. And so obviously the Acupuncturist Association, frankly, doesn't like the competition, I think is what this boils down to. And so they have filed a lawsuit trying to have those rules struck down and in the process get a ruling from the court saying acupuncture is off limits for chiropractors.
All right. Well, what are the key issues that the Acupuncture Association has brought up in this case, and why did the TCA get involved as an intervener?
Well, you know, the main issue they're raising is that their argument is that the legislature never intended for chiropractors to do acupuncture, and they make a lot of arguments about the way the law is written to get there. The reason that TCA got involved a few years ago, the case had been pending for a while, but before we got the Texas Supreme Court's decision in the nerve case, the acupuncturists, I think, started copying TMA a little bit and trying to inject nerve into this and say that, well, one reason why acupuncture is off limits is because it involves nerves, and nerves are off limits for chiropractors. So that obviously raised a big red flag for TCA. Right? We're talking about a threat to a core issue here. So TCA got involved. Since that time, we fortunately won the case at the Texas Supreme Court against TMA, challenging nerve. And so one of the benefits of that win is that it's kept the door open for acupuncture in this case. And it's taken away one of the arguments that the acupuncturists tried to raise to keep acupuncture out of the scope for Texas chiropractors.
I understand. Gosh, why do you think the TCA is in the right in this case?
Well, you know, I think because number one, the legislature absolutely has intended for chiropractors to have acupuncture as a choice. There's a long list of amendments that have happened over the years to the law, but you know, the irony of this, and it's something I'm kind of looking forward to explaining to the judge, is, you know, the acupuncturists are really locking on to one part of the Chiropractic Act, and it says that chiropractors must use non-incisive procedures. And so, you know, their argument is, well, acupuncture is incisive. So, case closed. The irony of that is that in the Acupuncture Act, acupuncture was defined by the legislature as the non-incisive insertion of acupuncture needles. So, that argument's a little bit of a Pyrrhic victory because, if they're really wanting to take away acupuncture from chiropractors, then I guess logically they're taking it away from themselves. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to have it both ways at trial. I'm sure they'll come up with some clever dance. But the reality is the words can only mean one thing. The legislature could have only meant one thing, and that is that chiropractors should have the option to use acupuncture.
You make it sound so easy. I understand why you're the man for our job. Thank you. I understand there's been some new developments in this case. Where are we now, and what is the process?
Sure. So the trial is currently scheduled for February of next year, right in the middle of session. However, there has been a battle that's been going on well in advance of trial, where the two sides are really fighting over what's the scope of this case. We take our cues from the recent Texas Supreme Court Nerve decision, which said you really just look at the text of the law and interpret the words of the statute, and that really should be the end of the matter. And it should be, by that logic, it should be a pretty easy exercise, a pretty short trial, not a lot of experts needed. But of course, there's a little bit of a kind of a watch the birdie going on here with the acupuncturists, because I think they know that if they fight that battle, they're probably going to lose. And so they're trying to make this case about a lot of other things. They're trying to make it about, are chiropractors really competent at what they do? Are they really qualified to do this? Can the board really be trusted? And so they're trying to really expand the scope of this case. So we've had some battles in the trial court over whether they should be able to get away with that. And unfortunately, the trial court, which is common for trial courts, they often just say, well, I'll let everything in and I'll, sort it out later. So the trial court was going to let the acupuncturist have that big kind of blunderbuss of a case at trial. We did do an appeal up the courts of appeal. And actually, the Texas Supreme Court has recently shown interest in that issue. And they have issued a stay of the trial so that they can decide who's right about that. What should the scope of this case be? And we're optimistic that they, at least at first glance, are seeing the case the way we do, because of course, if they saw it the way the trial court did, they probably wouldn't get involved. So we're hopeful that actually we might get an early ruling from the Texas Supreme Court that really narrows this where it should be and makes it an easier win at trial. Of course, there's no telling whether the court will stay interested or rule in our favor on that, but it's a good sign.
That sounds like fantastic news. So we'll all be excited about that. Concerning this acupuncture mess we have going on, obviously chiropractors who have a permit to perform chiropractic acupuncture should have an interest in the outcome. Why should all chiropractors in Texas be concerned about what happens?
Well, there's more at stake than just acupuncture in a case like this. Just like I mentioned about the nerve case, these cases build on each other. And every case is a piece of kind of a firewall that's protecting your scope of practice. And so when you win one case, it sets a favorable precedent that you can cite in future cases. And so, I think that's what I think is involved here, because the acupuncturists want to make this about how competent and qualified chiropractors are. About, can the board that adopts rules that protect your scope, can they really be trusted, right? Are their rules, do they really carry weight? And I think holding that line, right, defending the reputation of chiropractors, defending the integrity and the reputation of the board, at a minimum, those things I think have positive effects in the future cases, right? It just gives the profession and the board greater standing for future battles. And of course, in every case, there's the chance that a judge will make some kind of a ruling that has unintended consequences. And so, you really want to try to win the issues every time they go to court, if you can. And so obviously, not knowing what those future issues may be, they could affect every chiropractor in the state.
Oof. Well, Matt, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom on this topic. We are very grateful. For the crowd, now's the time for your questions. And again, please type them in the chat box and we'll get to them. We have a question in the chat box. The question is, do our lobbyists know of any adversarial bills that will be presented?
Well, so the answer to that is not yet. Bill filing just begun a couple of days ago, so we have not really yet worked through a lot of that. But we're always on the lookout for it. That kind of speaks to the bill review committee that I mentioned earlier. We're going to be digging through those bills with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there's nothing in there that we need to be worried about. But as of yet, no, we don't really see anything like that on the horizon. Although we anticipate there will be. Every session, there's things that pop up that we're concerned about. So we'll be vigilant.
Thank you, Josh. Any other questions? Please type them in the chat box and we will get them addressed. Okay, moving forward, I want to thank everybody who attended tonight's webinar. As you can see, the TCA is here to protect chiropractic in Texas, and we couldn't do it without our members. If you're not a TCA member, I invite you to join. You're part of this community and you're very welcome. If you are a member, I also urge you to support TCA's Chiropractic Development Initiative, or the CDI. The legal expenses for this acupuncture case have been substantial, and we expect it to continue as we prepare to go forward to trial. Your donations as part of the Move the Needle campaign in the CDI will help defray our legal expenses. Whether you practice chiropractic acupuncture or not, we're counting on you to make a one-time donation to the CDI. Or even better, become a 100 by 100 CDI contributor. You'll see a QR code to make your donation, or text the number on the screen and you can donate with your mobile phone. I want to invite you to the final stop of our 2022 TCA Tour of Texas, our road show that goes across the state of Texas. It's this Friday at 6:30 p.m. We'll be at Top Golf at Houston, Katy, in Houston area. You'll meet TCA executives and go to see your other chiropractic colleagues. You'll play some golf, eat some food, and have some drinks and raise some money for CDI. You can also participate in our live and silent auctions. There's going to be lots of great prizes and experiences. So check your emails for the invite or go to the TCA website. I want to personally thank our TCA Tour of Texas sponsor, David Berquist and the Berquist Law Firm, for hosting these events. They've been fabulous so far. A big thank you to our panelists and to all of you who took time out of your busy schedule to attend tonight's meeting. We'll see you at the next TCA event. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, everybody.